Hey folks, so I've been looking back at some of my old videos, and the most popular ones seem to be the box making videos. At the risk of pandering to my own personal fetish, here comes another one. And this time I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Boxes are made out of just 2 lines. So what am I talking about? Think about it this way. Boxes have an inside and outside. The bottom of the box is basically like a cup with an inside and an outside. The lid needs to fit the box. Since we don't want the lid to just lay there, we need a lip for the box that follows the inside of the bottom. This means that the lid has its own inside and outside, one that matches the bottom of the box. Let's take a look at some examples. If we look at boxes with that in mind, we have a square box here that has an outside wall and an inside wall. 1 line, 2 lines. And the lid matches, right? There's an outside and an inside. And those are literally the same line. So it doesn't matter if the box is rectangular, still the same thing. Outside, inside, outside, inside. Circular, same thing. Outside, inside, outside, inside. Even if you get into something a little crazy, like say a box shaped like a sugar skull, you can do the same thing. Outside, inside, outside, inside. That lip matches the box and it fits down like that. So what does this mean for us in Carbide Create? Well, let's take a look at your new best friend, the Inset Offset Path tool. So at its most basic, we can start with pretty much any shape we want. For simplicity, let's just do square for right now. Once we have this as the outer edge of our box, we need to decide how thick we want the walls to be. And I'm going to use this over here, the Offset Vectors tool, to create a wall that is 0.2 inches across, and I'm going to tell it to do that to the inside. And now we've got our inner and our outer. Now the one thing we're also going to find out with this is that we have all these sharp corners. And as we know from previous videos, when you do the inside and the outside, you're going to leave little bits because that 1/4 inch tool won't get into these little corners, right? So whenever you try and do that, you're going to end up with this little bit here left over. We don't want that. So in order to do this, I'm going to select everybody and I'm going to come over here to the Fill All tool. And I'm going to tell it I want just enough space for these things to get that 1/4 inch bit in there. And that will leave me with these little rounded areas. And that's what I want. I'm going to replace my original vectors. Okay. And now we have basically the pattern for our box. The way this works is that for the initial box, we come in and we do 2 separate tool paths. We do a pocket here, and we go down to the stock bottom, and the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to tell you to do T minus 0.2. And what that's going to do is leave 0.2 inches from the bottom of the box. So if I come in here and I do my pocket, and I show my simulation, this stops 0.2 inches, so that'll be 0.2 inches thick. If I come back into my design later on and I change my thickness to 1 inch, all the tool paths update, and I still get the same amount taken off. I still end up with 0.2 inches of thickness at the bottom of my box. This is a really great way to set these things up because you never know when you're going to change stock and have slight variations in the thickness, and it will leave you a consistent wall there. So for the outer portion of our box, I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to do a contour toolpath, 1/4 inch bit, I'm going to go around the outside, and I'm going to set this max depth to T. And again, that's just going to set it to the very bottom of where that box, of where our stock is. And I'm going to call this cutout and tell it OK. And if we look now at our simulation, we see it's gone down to the bottom and we have the bottom of our box. And again, like the rest of this, it doesn't matter how I set this. I can come back in and change my stock later to where, if say it's only a 3/4 box, right? So 0.75, I've got thinner stock then. If I tell it OK, I come back to my tool paths, show my simulation, and it's still the same thing. I still am going to have 0.2 of an inch down here at the bottom, and it's going to cut out accurately to this piece. So now that I've got that, let's take it and do the top, right? So I'm going to go ahead and call this bottom. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to create a new tool path. I'm going to call this one top. And we can do the same kind of thing. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is, instead of cutting a pocket in this, I'm going to cut around the outer edge. So I'm going to do a contour. I'm going to go around the outside. And in this case, I always want my lip to be about 0.15 inches deep around here. So this will stick up about 0.5 inches. So in this case, I'm not going to use the T variable. I'm just going to tell it 1.5. And I'm going to call this lip. Cool. If we look at our simulation, right, that leaves us this inside piece. And then on this one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a contour outside. And I'm going to set this to the bottom. So again, T. That's all I'm going to use. So now, if I'm going ahead and I'm making my top, say, out of, let's say, 1/2 inch, right? I can come back to my design. I can set this to 1/2 inch. Then I go back to my tool paths, show my simulation, and you notice I've got the lid exactly how I want it. This piece is raised up about 0.15 inches, and then the rest of the lid is cut out as usual. You'll get some little tips here on the edge. You can snap those off pretty easily. One thing you can also do on this kind of selection here is sometimes you'll find that cutting the bottom and the top in the exact way so that lip is the exact size of the pocket is a little too tight. And you can actually come in and adjust that. What I do typically is I go back to my design and I'll select this piece and do the offset vectors again, but I'll set this to where I'm doing 0.003 inches, or sorry, 0.004 inches. You can play with this adjustment however you like, but this essentially is going to create 0.004 of an inch difference. And you can see it's really, really close, and if I zoom in, you'll see it's very, very close like this. So I can now make that the lip for the top, right? So if I go back in, I select my lip, and I tell it change vectors, use the current selection, which is going to be the one we have there. So this will make that lip slightly smaller, so that this piece is slightly smaller and will fit more easily into our box. Now that's the basics of this idea of just two lines. But this works with pretty much any kind of box, right? So if I go back to my design, I'm going to get rid of this completely. You know, if I do a circle, it's the same kind of thing. Come in, set this 0.2. That's how wide my walls are going to be. And cool. Now I've got this, and I've got the same thing. I've got an inside and an outside. Come back to my tool paths. I can set the pocket to this one. I change that one to this. All right, so that those are like this. And again, I get my box the way I expect. Done. All right. If I disable this, enable this one, now I come to my lip, tell it change the vectors, use the current selection. Same with this one. Change the vectors, use the current selection. Cool. Now I've got that, and if I show my simulation, I get my top. This little piece here fits right down into this hole that I needed. Now, this works too for complicated designs. Let's say I go back to my designer. I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to come in and open up one of the elements library. I'm going to do this guy. All right. Let's take him. I'm going to group him for right now and make him about 5 inches high. Okay, now I can zoom in on him, right? And if I want to make a box out of him, let's say I'm going to just, V-carve this guy, this piece in here, but I want to make this the edge of my box. Come in, break these apart, and I'm going to select this outer piece here. Now the first thing I want to do is I notice that I've got these little sharp corners in here and in here, and I know that my 1/4 inch bit won't get in there. So what I'm going to do first before I do any of this is I'm going to come back to my Fillet All tool. Yeah, I know it's not fillet. Give me a break. And I'm going to set this to 126. Okay. So now I've got little areas that I know my 1/4 inch bit will get into. So now I have this set. This will be the outside of my box. And then I can come in and choose this and inside. And now I've got the inside of my box. So, same kind of principle then with my tool paths is I come in and I set for the bottom. Pocket is going to be this one. Change vectors. Okay. And then for this one, for the cutout, I want that vector, and it's still set to T. Now, if I look at my simulation, I've got my box. Now, when you have a design like this, where the box is going to be asymmetrical, the thing you have to be really careful about when you do your lid is you're going to have to flip this design. So I tend to save this as a new file and go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to do it in this file for right now just to keep things simple enough. I'll go ahead and delete this. So let's assume this is the top that we're working on now. I want to take this entire design, grab it, go into my design, and I'm going to mirror it like that. That way, when we flip our lid over, the box will fit correctly. So now that I've got that, the tool paths are exactly the same as how we had them before, right? So this is going to be our lip going around, and we'll do a contour 1/4 inch bit. We're going to leave that 0.15. We're going to go outside right, call it lip. Alright, then we're going to come around to our other design here, this one, and that's going to be our outside contour. Current selection, and we're going to do T for that one because that's going to be our stock thickness. Outside right, and call it cutout. Okay, so now that one, if I look at my tool paths and my simulation, so this will fit directly into the bottom of our box because it will flip over. Again, you can do the same kind of thing if you want a looser fit. Go ahead and bring this in 4/1000ths of an inch if you want for a slightly looser fit, and then come back in, and whatever you want to do on the top of your box you can then do. So if you try this technique, you'll be able to create boxes of any size and shape that you want. And it'll give you a little bit more time to do things on the top of the box that make it more visually interesting. Get as artistic as you like. Hopefully this will help you, and I will see you again next time. Thanks.